great turnout. I think this is probably the most we've had since COVID, right?
Yep.
16 in person. That's awesome. I'm sitting in my van in Ashland right now. I had to be in Medford for work and got to fish the Rogue a little bit today, and we'll be fishing tomorrow again. Which leads to Rob Perkins, who is our presenter tonight. Rob, I met about 3 years ago, probably at Royal Treatment Fly Fishing. He, his wife, and his awesome dog Cooper, little Chihuahua, and been part of my fly fishing family since that day. Rob's gone through some pretty cool life path journeys in the past year and a half, I would say. And he and Aaron have created a really cool concept for outfitting and guiding, and all through his very talented hands of boat building, and Aaron as well. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy. I know the club members are going to enjoy this presentation, and I highly recommend calling Rob after it to book a Dory trip for sure. So on that note, Rob Perkins.
Thank you, Shandy. Thanks, Tim, for inviting me, and thank you all for being here tonight. I'm really pumped to kind of share a little bit about what is Pacific City Dory fly fishing and where its history came from and where we are today. So we'll get right into it. Maybe. There we go. So first off, kind of go over what we're going to cover today. Topics, just what Connect Outfitters is, what we've developed here, and what I like to see, what the vision for Connect Outfitters is, and where we were taking that. Going to outline the history of the Dory fleet. It's a pretty unique the fishery that we have, and the history is very steeped in tradition and everything there. So, and the fishery itself is quite interesting and unique as well. So we'll get into all the different things, ways we have to fish for them, and the different resources we have, the different species we get to target offshores there, the gear we use, and then we'll kind of close it up with questions at the end. So first off, when I was kind of a year and a half, like Shandy mentioned, thinking about this whole idea of kind of transitioning from the office into something different and guiding and things like that, and what it meant to me and what I really wanted to carry on to everybody else. Obviously, we're all here to catch fish, right? And love catching fish, love getting people into fish. It's the primary focus, but really beyond that, I think what's important and what kept coming back to me was just creating experiences that can connect us to one another, to everything around us, and to those fish, right? So that's my goal in everything that we do is being able to create that experience for everybody. So a little bit more about me. Yeah, I grew up kind of right here in the Pacific Northwest, going to Pacific City on every weekend, fishing all the waters there, whether it be the rivers, some of the lakes, and a lot offshore in our old 1960 Calkins Craft double ender. Built my first drift boat with my grandfather when I was 14, and I was running rivers on the coast before I could drive. So I always used to like to stay there. So it's been a lot of fun. This whole Dory thing, it's been in my blood. I had to wait until I was 10 to go out in a Dory, but it's something I couldn't wait for that day to come. And since that time, I've never looked back. It's just a really great, unique thing to get to do. How we got into kind of fly fishing for them was after reading a few books on fly fishing for salmon in the Puget Sound. I thought it was such a similar fishery to what we have here in Pacific City. I'm like, why couldn't we be bucktailing at least for these coho right off the coast, and definitely fly fishing for the rockfish right there. So that was in 2008, and my father and brother were out there. They thought I was absolutely nuts. Like, this will never work. You have to use divers, you have to use bait and flashers and all this gear to catch these coho, and was able to change their mind in about 30 minutes time. So, which was pretty fun. It was almost immediate reaction, just bucktailing a fly, and the prop wash got results real quick from these coho. So So the seasons that I work with, it's not just the dory season. Just giving a little background on what I do year round. I'm fishing the coast from January through April for winter steelhead, swinging flies for that in the North Coast area. So that's all Nestucca, Trask, Kilchis kind of area. And then May through September is all focused on dory fishing. So it starts here in a few weeks for the rockfish and lingcod. And then the salmon fishing was just announced. We're going to start salmon fishing middle of June. And that goes through September. And then we have also the albacore tuna, which are in August and September as well. And then I transition in October and November to the Middle Rogue summer steelhead fishery there. But today we'll be focus on that dory fishery here. So if we were to summarize dory fishing into one thing, everybody asks just what is it like? It's really just exhilarating, I think, experience from launch to landing. There's from the time you leave the beach, you're heading out over the waves, through the breakers, and into that open ocean, and the fishery is right there, always close at hand. Plenty of action normally, and then it doesn't stop there with your return to the beach. So a little bit about the dories and where we've kind of come over the years. The boats, the traditional style dory was more of a drift boat, really. Had a similar rocker to a drift boat. They started out being 16 to 20 feet long, really was the max. They actually originally would build them on the beach in the early summer and just leave them there throughout the summer, and they would just build a new one the next year. These guys that built these boats down at the Cape. So they were much smaller boats, 4 to 8 inch bottoms, double-ended at the time. So it felt like that's how much you had to get out through the surf and back. All row style. So you had 2 sets of oars for 2 people to row them out through the surf. In the early days, no motors. They would actually just row them up north and then drift back with the tide and the currents in the afternoons and back onto the beach. And then they started putting the wells in them, like you see here. This is the first picture there is our 1960 boat with a motor well, and we had a 15-horse motor in that. So we row out through the surf, drop the motor down. You could motor out. Our range was, 6-7 miles for salmon, and then pull it up, and you'd row back in and land on the beach. And then in the late 50s, we got into this first generation of the square stern boats. This is a great example of one built by Paul Hanneman. It's a 20-foot boat with the motor well still set inside. They just didn't, those first versions, they felt that there was no way that you could actually use them correctly without having that well inside the boat. If you put it off the stern, it would, it just wouldn't work well, was the general consensus at the time, which turned out to be, completely wrong. So now you see in the third picture, this is a picture of our current boat that we built last year. And this is an example of what all the boats now look like. So you have offshore brackets kind of that tilt up, built off the back of the boat. They're much bigger now. All the boats are averaging, 20 to 24 feet, much wider bottom to them. And like I said, they do have that tilt bracket on the back, so makes that part easy landing. So on the history of the area, back in 1908, the Nestucca River right there in Pacific City was home to a lot of canneries, commercial canneries. And that's something that's, I think, similar up and down the coast of Oregon at the time. There was a lot of commercial harvest in the rivers for salmon primarily. But that quickly started to dry up over time, so that saw by the early 1920s, many of the rivers were having to be closed to commercial fishing. And in the early 1900s, there was initial attempts were made to use these dories offshore. They initially started trying to navigate through the Nestucca River mouth, which is not something you'd normally want to recommend. It's not a navigable passageway, but these small boats, they would do that with oars or sail power at the time on occasion on very nice days. But by 1926, there was bills introduced that effectively shut down all commercial fishing on the Nestucca, and I think a lot of areas up and down the coast for salmon fishing. So they were kind of forced into doing something different. And that's when the dories that we see today were kind of pioneered. They started launching them at the Cape there in Pacific City because of the natural break that the Cape offers there. It makes it so that generally all summer long you have this nice breakwater for that north currents and the waves there to protect you from launching and landing. So that took you up to about the 1930s or so when they first had power motor in the boats, and then by 1958, like I mentioned, we saw the first square-ended boats take place, and they've been a natural evolution since then. Just things keep getting added as technologies improve. The 90s saw the last real big breakthroughs with much larger boats, and the breakaway offshore brackets being added. I included just a few pictures. This was last summer of us putting together our first PC Dory. As I mentioned, I've built 4 drift boats over the years, and always had in my mind that I wanted to put together build a Dory, and you know, how much different could it be from a drift boat? And the answer is quite a bit different. This was a beast. I mean, it took my poor wife Erin. She, you know, full-time job, and she would come home the weekends and the evenings and spend all of our time working on this boat for 3 months. It was my full-time job last summer. We started it. That was May 1st last year, and finished the boat at the end of July. So just a beast. It's just under 24 feet long. It's got, you know, it's 5.5, 6 foot bottom to it. Great boat. All the bottom modern features, built with, you know, we have everything from sapele mahogany woods being used to the latest in a lot of the plywoods that are used, to Hydrotech plywoods and things, and then it's glassed over that. So it's a lot of fun. So the fishery itself, into that, and this is a good picture to kind of to show you an example too of the Cape. If you haven't been to Cape Kiwanda, what that looks like. This example shows on the right hand side of the screen that natural breakwater with the Cape extending out there over a quarter mile, and how that really just creates this, you know, with the majority of the north swells that we get, creates a nice break for launching and landing. So it's an exciting experience, right? So I mean, it starts off by just backing the, you know, rig and the boat into the water stern first, and the trailers that we use are a flat bottom trailer with 3 or 4 sets of rollers on that. So you back into where you just have a foot or so of water under the boat, and just hit the brakes and go forward, and the boat just kind of slides off of the trailer, and you flip it around, park right on the beach, and you're off you go, ready to go. There's another great example of the Cape there as well. So the other thing that we're blessed with there in Pacific City is reefs being so close to the beach. We have great rockfish and lingcod reefs right by Haystack Rock there. So you're less than a mile away, and you have an abundance of reefs to choose from, miles and miles of reefs that hold a lot of fish. And other things that make it such a unique thing is that it's, you know, it's different than all those other charter fisheries where you have, you know, you might be stacked in these boats. We only take up to 4 people, so it's a fly fishing experience. Very, you know, nice, just with your close friends, and we're using light gear and fishing for, you know, everything here from the salmon to the rockfish to lingcod. So, and then it doesn't stop either, right? So once you're headed in, we stow things away, and I think Shandy can actually attest to this, that, you know, one thing I've usually mentioned is, well, we kind of want to brace yourself because we're going to hit the beach about 20 miles an hour, and people kind of at first think you're kidding about this, but there is a reason behind that. You do hit the beach about 20 miles an hour, and it's kind of you need to stay up and or, you know, you wait for those waves to break, and then you accelerate over the top of them, and they're traveling about 15 miles an hour. So you end up going over the tops of those and landing on the beach at a nice high rate of speed. But the boats are designed so that flat bottom just slides up and out of the water and onto the hard sand, ready to be picked up by the trailer. And this is a great example of kind of what the trailer looks like. That has a tilt axle to it, so you just back right up underneath the flat bottom boat, rolls up to about this point, and you can just crank it in from there. So all of the species that we get to fish for off the coast here, we'll start off with the rockfish. And rockfish are year-round for us. They're present, any month you can get out. Weather conditions usually dictate that I'm usually fishing for them from May on. There's been guys going out the last few months and doing really well with the rockfish. They're just plentiful on those reefs. But May through September, it's where you want to be. The reefs are, as I mentioned before, just 5 minutes from the beach. And once you locate those schools, the action can be pretty crazy. The rockfish average 3 to 6 pounds. So they're a fun size on lighter gear. Fish can get bigger than that, up to about 10 pounds in these rockfish, and they just pull hard. So the reefs that we're fishing over, to give you an idea, they're about 30 to 60 feet deep. And the rockfish, a lot of people are like, there's no way you can get these, they get flies to these fish. They're used to using conventional gear and getting way down. But the fact is, these fish are all suspended off the bottom in 20 to 30 feet of water most of the time. And on occasion, we'll even find them feed on the surface on crab spawn and things. So in those cases, I always usually have a rod or two that has a floating line and some poppers to be able to throw when you find those fish in the surface. Because then that's just a blast to be able to throw poppers to these rockfish and have them just explode on it. This is a good example of what the chart plotter looks like when you go over a school over these reefs. They are plentiful when you find the school. There's hundreds of them on these typical areas on the reefs when you get to them, and you can see what happens when you do find them. So you don't even need to look at the chart plotter half the time. You just look at the rods in the boat, and they'll all be doubled over in no time. There's no real matching the hatch with these guys. So it's, we use a lot of different flies, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit later, but generally speaking, they are hungry and they'll take a variety of different flies at the same time. So then our coho and chinook fishery, as I mentioned, we're going to start that in June this year, and it is going to run into September, it sounds like. So nice long season. It's looks like it's going to be very similar to last year. Similar kind of numbers that we're expecting back, which last year was an epic year for the fishery there. Most of the places that we're fishing are within 5 miles of the beach. Less, really, for the most part. 1 or 2 miles is usually where you have, as far as you have to go. But these guys are feeding really heavily in the summer, so we'll start to see fish. They'll show up here in May. We'll accidentally catch them a lot of times when we're fishing for rockfish, and they'll be 4 to 6 pound fish, but they're putting on 1 to 2 pounds per week by late June, July. So they really start to pack on the weight to where for a month period there, all of a sudden your fish are getting up to 14 pounds, 12, 14 pound fish. And when we get into those heavy feeding schools of fish, they will occasionally have chinook feeding up there with them. So you do have a chance at an opportunity at those as well. When we're going for these guys, we start out by looking for the different things, right? So they're all about food. So we're looking for the rips, we're looking for bait balls, crashing birds, any kind of temp break as well. Usually when you're on the coast here, right off the beach, many times the water temps are in like that 47 to 49 degree water. we're kind of looking forward to just shift to about 52 degrees is a great sign. And then anytime, if you see, temp doesn't matter, if you start to see a lot of bait and things like that, there's usually salmon around in the summertime. So we'll bucktail for them for a while, and until you kind of locate those schools. And once you locate the school, we're able to a lot of times set up on the north side of that, drift through it, and you can make casts out to them and have them take on the strip right at the boat, which gets very exciting. A couple examples of just what these fish look like. They don't call them silvers for no reason. That fish on the left is just a beautiful example of your average wild coho, just chrome dime bright fish, full of, I mean, when they take a fly, they're just all over the water. There's none of that other gear getting in the way. I mean, it's just you, the fly, and that fish, and it just explodes, usually tail walking across the ocean, which is a blast. And then another great example of a hatchery fish there on the right. Should mention, so in these fisheries, that fishery that'll start in June and go through August it's what's considered a selective fishery. So it's retention of hatchery fish, 2 hatchery coho a day. And then in September, at some point, they usually shift it to where you can retain some wild fish in that fishery, as well as the hatchery ones. So. And then the tuna. So albacore tuna on the fly is a crazy experience. It's something that we're really fortunate to have off the Oregon coast. Some people hard to believe at times, but they're there. They'll start showing up in July. The peak of the fishery is in August and September. They are similar in what we're looking for as far as with the salmon, except the temperatures are warmer. But as far as you're looking for those rips and bait, and then we are going for 60, 61 degree water is what we're focused on. So as it starts to get into late July, we're really looking at, what those charts are showing. You have the satellite charts that are showing temperatures and chloral breaks and things like that, and everybody's really focused on just how close is that water? Is it pushing in? Because it starts out to where it's 50, 60 miles out, and there's guys that will start to chase them in dories at 40 or so. I like to see a little closer. That's a long trek out there. We'll usually try and wait in August and September. You're starting to get it to where they're within 20 to 30 miles, which is much closer and easy hour and a half away. But yeah, we'll do the same thing with the tuna. You're gonna troll a little faster than we do for the coho, which about 6 miles an hour, with the flies just back there in the prop wash, maybe a little further back, and just wait for some rods to for them to take off. When you get them hooked, it's just insanity. I mean, the runs that they go on it's unreal. It's one of those where if you really get into them during the day, by your third or fourth fish, you'll get you start getting them on the cast and things, and you get that grab, and you're like, oh, that was awesome. And then, okay, who wants this rod? Because I'm done. I'm done fighting these. But the key there is, yeah, you locate those schools, same kind of thing. They'll be feeding close to the surface, and then for the tuna, we can actually throw bait. We don't have live bait close by in Pacific City, but we'll throw dead bait in the water. And if you have a fish that's also on the line, and keeping one fish on a line while you throw that dead bait in the water allows you to, and everybody can be casting flies into that, and you can visually watch them just grab these flies and take it off. So pretty awesome. Couple more examples of what these fish look like. Just beautiful colors they have to them, and just torpedoes, right? And then there's Josh Lynn with a 12 weight that looks like it's corked over to where it looks like it's about to. I actually thought this one, it was Josh's rod, so I wasn't too worried, but I thought he was probably going to break that rod. He had it corked over so well. But they just make you feel like you know, when you're casting that 12-weight, you're thinking, this is just a beast to cast. And then you hook one and it doesn't feel like you have near the rod that you need for a while there. But they're a lot of fun. And what you get experience there when you head offshore and you get into that kind of environment out there, you know, 15 to 20 miles offshore, when you get the water turns the blue color, like you'd swear you're in a tropical location. It just doesn't feel like it's off the Oregon coast. The mammals that you see, dolphins and whales and things, it's just such a awesome experience. So some of the gear that we use for this, get into everything from rods and reels for different things. So for the rockfish, I like 6 to 8 weight rods. Anything, you know, that in that range is going to be perfect. You do have occasions with, you know, on the upper end of that, 8 weight is more than you need for a rockfish, but there are times when you'll get a rockfish that takes you down back into the rocks and finds what we call a hitchhiker there, which is a lingcod decides that it wants that rockfish as much as you, and they don't let those guys go. So it's nice to have an 8 weight in those situations to be able to bring that lingcod up with the rockfish. Usually in that case, you'd think the lingcod would let it go when it gets to the surface. You bring them both in the boat most of the time. So that's where you go. And then as far as reels go for that, it's just nice to have saltwater sealed reels. You don't something that can be easily rinsed down and things. They don't need a heavy drag system for the rockfish at all, but it just needs to be something that's ready for saltwater. And for the salmon, I love 7 to 9 weight rods for those. Again, 7, 8s are great for the coho. Occasional Chinook, and if you feel like that 9 weight's nice to have. And as far as reels there, same thing with saltwater resistant. I do like better drags for these. I use on the boat. I do provide all the gear. You're welcome to bring your own on trips, but I have all Nautilus reels that just can you rely on those drags. You know where they're going to be. Just nice, smooth, quick pickups. Nothing jerky there, and they're easy to just wash down and also hold a lot of capacity as far as your backing. So, and the tuna, as I mentioned, it's all 11, 12 weight rods. Some guys will occasionally bring a 10 weight out there, and it's just had a few of them break. It's getting the way you feel better about having a little more backbone to that rod when that tuna sounds and is, you know, 200 feet below you and still going with it. And you're in 1,200 feet of water. So, and the saltwater reels, again, just high capacity here and real strong drag systems. Rely on. Lines, there's so many lines that'll work for these fish. But I listed a few of the ones that we use a lot in the different for the different species. For rockfish, use a lot of the airflow, the cold water saltwater sinks in the 7, and then the Rio Coastal Quick Shooter, and any of the Sonar SA Sonar Titan series lines in the different sink rates are always great. Use those a lot in salmon and rockfish there. And then the same kind of things for the salmon, airflows, that cold water saltwater sink 7 and the intermediate. Nice to have something it stays a little shallower sometimes, because there's many times that the salmon, once you hook up or you locate those schools, they can be just in the top 5 feet of the water. So it's nice to be able to stay right there if you need to. Same with the Rio Outbound shorts, intermediate to fast sink. Custom cuts work well, and then the Titan series and the Sonar custom tip 7-8 inch per second sink rates are good. And for tuna, we use airflow deep depth finder big game, excuse me, and the Rio Leviathan a lot. But there's a lot of other ones that'll work. I think, you know, anything that's just gonna, you know, get you down deep is meant for cold water is key. A lot of the others, you know, a lot of saltwater lines are more warm water, so they'll kink up a little too much out here, like on the colder water. Anything that's that cold water series will work great. And flies. Flies, there's all kinds of things that'll work for rockfish and flies. So we have everything from the poppers I mentioned to clousers. I like a lot of Steve Farblend kind of clousers. That synthetic material is better in a lot of ways than the bucktail. You're going to catch, in most cases, a lot of rockfish, and if you can have that synthetic material, it just stands up to that more than the bucktail will. Bucktail's great, but you might catch 5 or 6 rockfish on a fly, and all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 pieces of bucktail left on the fly. So that's where that's just great stuff to work with. That Steve Farblend. A lot of lead-eyed flies, just something that's going to be able to sink down in that current. The current's moving at 2 to 3 miles an hour with the boat drift. So nice to be able to have, if the fish are down in that 20 to 30 foot range, just something that with that line will just sink relatively quick, so you can twitch and strip, kind of retrieve for those guys. And as far as lengths go on these, most of these, to give you an idea, they're in that 2 to 4.5 inch range. Say the average is probably most of the time, most of these are around 3 inches. Occasionally use those bigger ones like at the top there for more of the, they get into like squid and things like that they're eating, and might need something that's a little more like that at times. And salmon, salmon doesn't matter as long as it's pink with the coho. That's not entirely true, but boy, we sure catch a lot of them on pink. I end up fishing more pink, however, so there's always that. But the flies that I do like, as far when we're bucktailing to locate the schools, there's a lot of the like bigger flies, these flat wings, hollow tide flat wings that you see on the left side of the screen. They look so good in the water, as far as they just have a nice, they're not terrible if you need to cast them, but in the water they just really flow and just have a good, just good fishy look to them. And then everything else, clousers always work, Steve Farblend as well, and even little tube flies, so you get these guys on everything from 5-inch flies, like you see on the left-hand side of the screen, to much smaller 2.5 to 3-inch small clousers, in many ways. So the tuna, same kind of variety with these guys as well. Ones we're using for that trolling are heavy eyes on that, just to get down 5 to 10 feet. When you're trolling at 6 miles an hour, type of thing, with that stuff, to initially find these guys, that fly is going to be onto the surface unless it has good weight in the line and in the fly itself. So that's why that's nice to have. On occasion, it is good, skipping across the top of the water will attract them to the surface many times, and you will get them right there. But if it can be 5 feet deep, we find that they'll usually be grabbing that one over the one that's skipping on top of the surface. And then once we do locate the schools and you're able to cast to them, the kind of the flies that you see in the upper right corner there, I designed those. They're kind of candies that I've seen other places. I designed them to kind of go through the water column like the IQF anchovies that we throw, the dead bait. They kind of just flutter down. So they're perfect for in that case, where once you've thrown out some of those anchovies, you just kind of let those guys just flutter through the water column, and that get 10 feet deep or so, and usually they're getting grabbed. So size on these, 3.5 up to 6 inches for those ones that were initially trolling. Like that one on the top of the screen is closer to 6 inches. So all kinds of flies will work, though. That's what's so great about these. It's just all the little experimenting that you get to do with this fishery. And so that's a very quick run through of the fishery there. I have days available this summer, so you can always reach out to me, email, phone, or website. You can see available days as well under the Dory fishery. And then I think we're just ready for some questions.
So you said you, this is Ricky, you said you typically take how many fly fishermen? Did you say 4?
4, yes.
4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you wait till you have a full boat or you'll take less?
No, it's by the boat. So yeah,
By the
so
boat,
you
okay.
just like it would be for fly fishing.
Okay, gotcha. Yep,
Yep.
there's a cost no matter. Yep. And, okay, got it.
Yeah.
So did you hear that?
Well, I missed something there. Tim, I think you're muted if you're trying to say something from there.
Or are these all half day or full day trips?
All full day trips, yes. So the general day is meet at the Cape there at 6 o'clock, and weather dependent as far as when you come in. You know, if it starts to blow or something like that, like it can on the Oregon coast, then you might be in before noon. Usually around 1 o'clock or so is when we come in, clean up the fish, get you on your way that way, have lunch. So yeah.
Do you ever tie flies to the trailer?
Yes. Well, yeah, you'll see a lot of the flies there had. So a few of them on the tuna, this one towards the bottom had a trailer, and a lot of these are actually set up to where they're set up for a trailer hook on there. They're not shown in this picture, but like these ones, the hollow flat wings there on the left-hand side of the screen, all have little Senyo wire set up for the trailer hook there. Yep.
And then I invited, see if I can turn my sound down a little bit. All this.
Tim, we're having some issues with sound.
I know.
Ooh, trippy.
It's the dramatic echo.
Wow. Like a bad acid trip. Yes, we can hear you
I can
clearly.
hear you. Yeah.
Hello.
I think everyone online is good. Yeah, they're having technical difficulties. So are you finished building your Dory, the one you and your wife are? Did you say you finished it? It took how long? 3 months?
A little over 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still, as I say that, the next couple of weeks, I'm still like tweaking things on the inside.
Yeah.
We started using it last August. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now
it's amazing.
Is that the one you take? Do you use that for guided trips, or that's just for your personal use?
Yeah. No, I use that for the guided trips.
Guided trips.
Yeah. That is so yeah, all the pictures, this is all pictures from this Dory actually from last year. I took them after the boat was built. So
I tried something.
that's the boat there.
Nice.
Yeah.
You say you can go out as far as 20 miles? Can you hear me?
I heard something about 20 miles for the tuna. Yeah, we go out as far as last year. There was a couple days we actually went out to 30 miles. So the nice thing about the Dory fleet that we have is you're not alone in those trips. So we always plan it to where I have other guides we have buddy boats that we go out with. So it makes that 20 to 30 mile jaunt feel much more safe and attainable, because you always have 2 or 3 other buddy boats that you're working with and in constant contact with, launching and returning with. So
Rob, do you ever do halibut since you're already out there?
as soon as I figure out how to get halibut on the fly, I'll be doing it.
Yeah.
I don't do halibut just for that reason. I just all fly fishing or bucktailing and fly fishing. So love halibut to eat. I just gotta work on that.
Maybe like the sucker fish of the sea.
I've seen videos from Alaska, these guys catching them on fly rods, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure they're very, the sport of it might be, I've heard it's like, bringing up a barn door. So I don't know on a fly rod what that's going to be like.
It's pretty uneventful. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
But love eating it. So yeah.
You get lingcod?
You do get lingcod. Yes. It's the best time to target lingcod is unfortunately when I'm still kind of wrapping up winter steelhead fishing is basically right now, because it's when they're on the shallower reefs. They're just starting to move off those shallower reefs. So it's not as easy of a guarantee for the lingcod. We'll get on quite a few occasions, you'll get them while you're rock fishing, either just incidental or like I mentioned, like as a hitchhiker, like those rockfish will go down and lingcod grabs a hold of them and you end up bringing up both of them a lot. But we can target them. It's just they're right on the bottom. So we'll have to use, when we go after them, I'll have my fly lines marked with like 10-foot increments. So that you're at the right depth. Otherwise you lose track and your fly line will just be sitting on the bottom and you're kind of twitching and jigging, your flies, you think, off the bottom. And really that fly line is just moving like this on the bottom. And there's like 10 feet of, the flies just ready to hang up on the rocks down there. So you lose fly lines on occasion that way. But
Is that early salmon fishery a barbless fishery?
yes, it's all barbless fishery, the whole season. So even when you get into September and it's the non-selective, they call it, it's still barbless hooks for that.
Well, you don't have a problem with that. I mean, you're accustomed to fishing with barbless hooks, and so it's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal, but you do lose fish. I mean, coho are just, it's all a lot of fun, but I'd say our catch rate with the barbless hooks is 50%. You're going to lose them. Since they're such acrobats and they're all over the water, they're throwing hooks. Yeah.
But that grab is so worth it.
Yep. Well, just the aerial spectacle of the coho is pretty awesome when they take off. So,
Rob, can you hear me now?
yes, that's better.
So we are getting some feedback, and I'm not sure how to control it. And still have my mic on.
It's much better.
So our attendees have been able to turn their mics on, but we can't seem to do it from the room. We do have some questions here, but this feedback is pretty bad, and I don't know how to solve it.
If you put some of the questions, type them into the chat, I can respond.
Rob, for a new guy in the area, what are the regs for salmon fishing and what extra license would I need, et cetera?
Great question. Yeah. So for that fishery, you don't need the Columbia River endorsement, but you will need, just like you would if you're going to go steelhead fishing, you have to have the salmon steelhead. I think it's the harvest tag, they call it, is the initial one. So that's all you'd need for that. And then that covers you for your two salmon per day.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Where'd you come from, Chuck?
From Puget Sound.
Oh, okay. Well, you used to have.
I'm used to chasing salmon.
Yep.
At least in the Sound, not off the coast.
Yeah, well, it's a similar thing. Like I said, that's exactly how I got into it. I read Les Johnson's his first edition of his saltwater fly fishing book, and I'm like, hey, why are we trolling around all this gear when this should work here? And I mean, it was, my dad's going, there's no way this is gonna work. I just put that fly back in the prop wash. Sorry, what was that?
There were years when pinks were at their best, when you could catch 40 or 50 a day. It was like insane. Not that way anymore, unfortunately.
No. We're fortunate with the coho that we've had some good years here. I don't, we got to figure out what's going on. So I guess there's a question. Please repeat your pricing. So pricing is based off the boat. So it's similar to your steelhead fishing, right? So up to 2 people is $550. 3 people, you're gonna ask me, is $675, I believe, for 3 people, and then 4, I have it at $750, I believe, for 4 people. And yes, you do need to bring your own tags. What I do when you reserve the trip, I send out a PDF, and it actually has links to the licensing if you need to, just to get the digital copies, which we're able to do in the state, which is nice. And also links to like places in the area to visit, hotels, recommended areas there, all that kind of stuff. So on that PDF, you kind of have everything you need in the Pacific City area.
And Rob is quite the fileter of fish as well. Pretty handy.
Any other questions in the room there? Got the one came up in there. How rough does it have to be before you cancel? That's a loaded question, because it's not just, you can't just say like 5 and 3, 5-foot swells and 3-foot wind waves, because it just depends on what that also entails. If it's south winds, or if they're, if it's a really close period where what we call it a square ocean. So you have the swells are 5 feet, but they're also 5 feet at like 6 seconds. So they're just like on top, or if they're 5 feet at 12 seconds, is a big difference. Big difference in the ocean that you get. So I'd say as far as percentage wise, we were able to go out 90% of the time in the summer, in the months I'm there. But safety is always my biggest concern. So, I try and call it as early as possible, or reschedule. It does happen on occasion. And if I had to put a number to it, I would say that 5 and 3, 5-foot swells and 3-foot wind waves with 10 plus knots of wind is usually going to get it canceled. It's just not going to be a comfortable day. The boat will take a lot more than we will. So, that the boat would be fine in that, but many people are not going to have a very fun day in that kind of thing. So, do tides make a difference in fishing success? No, tides don't. We will see. There's a lot of times when a certain tide on a certain day, all of a sudden they'll pick up. A lot of times at that slack period. So I guess if I had to choose a time where you might start to see more action, it would be at a slack phase, whether it be from high to low or low to high slack. But that being said, there's many times when it's just a random time when you're at the right area and the currents come together, that feeds there, and the fish are on at that point. They can't be too picky. Like, as I mentioned, they're on a time frame. I mean, they got to be packing on the pounds to head up the rivers in September. So when the feed's there, they're on it. In most cases, we're catching fish that are eating, 4 to 5 inch flies, and a hatchery fish, you're cutting it open, and its stomach is just as hard as a rock. You couldn't get anything more in their stomachs. I mean, they're just packed, and they're still looking to take in more food. So, Shandy, do you give seasick glasses to the whole crew? Sure, I have enough for everybody now. I'm a firm believer in whatever works. So I on my list, I have things as far as medications that you can get yourself. I obviously can't do any of that, but I do have glasses, and I'll also have the pressure point things this year. So anything that helps with anything like that for people. Yes.
To be fair, you have to explain what the glasses are all about.
Well, these glasses, I wish I had a pair of them here. I don't know how to explain them. They're bizarre. Last year was the first year I'd seen them used by anybody. It was a friend of mine whose family always got sick, and they got these glasses that they're not. There's no lenses in them. They're just these. They're just little circles around your eyes, and they have liquid in the bottom portion of them. And I think it must have something to do with the your eyes focusing on that liquid leveling area on the bottom of it that helps prevent you from helps show you the horizon and prevent you from getting sick. I fortunately don't get sick ever, so I haven't been able to use them myself, but I'd say on the boat last summer, it seemed like they were 70% success rate for people that, there were a few people that had to use them. So
I think Kirsten, she believed in them. They worked
Yeah.
for her.
yeah, she thought we
It
were
looked silly,
punking them.
but-
She thought we were punking her at first, but she was a believer by the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. What about moon phase? Similar to the tides. I mean, the only thing about the moon phase I'd say is, you get more extreme tides on occasion that can change things a little bit as far as the feed. But boy, I've noticed, I mean, you say that and then the next time out, they're there and they're feeding. So overall, I'd say no, that there's much of a difference there. Launch time, tides don't make a difference in the launch time, but so it's different in that it's different from the bays we have here, where you're always, you're worried about those ebb flows and things like that for leaving the bays, because that tidal influence and standing things up. We don't have to worry about that. But the one thing that I'll say there is it can affect the landing time. Like Shandy actually experienced this. So try and come in when you have some kind of beach to work with to load the boat back up onto. And if we hit a really high tide and you come in right at high tide, you're landing basically on soft sand and then trying to pick the boat up on there. So that's the hardest thing for us versus most areas on the coast where you have to worry about, a strong ebb flow tide really standing things up and causing any kind of dangerous situation there.
I'll try the mic here in the room again. Yeah. Oh. I've got all the mics shut off, but this one.
And that's doing it. Please talk about your first time through the wild and scenic this past fall.
Sorry, this doesn't really pertain to your presentation. I thought you were going to talk about the drift boats too, but you may as well. It's good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, we got a couple more trips this coming fall too on the wild and scenic. But yeah, for those who haven't been, I mean, so I work in my fall season. I'm very fortunate enough to work for Humble Heron out of Grants Pass area, which is James and Kate Samsel. And they own permits on the middle section of the road, which if you guys haven't done that, is an awesome fishery. I mean, that section, so that's the section kind of from Grants Pass down to the canyon. And it is it's swing water after swing water. A lot of, we kept wondering what was making this fishery different than everywhere else in Oregon last fall. Like we felt guilty talking about it. And the only thing we really come up with is it's those half pounders in their life cycle and how they probably don't go as far out in the ocean. They don't go as far out in the ocean as a lot of the other, fish that we have at that time of year. They're not going across the Pacific. And so that we had a great season, and it's just this water that's just, awesome to fish. And since it is a permit only section, you don't get the traffic that you get on the upper Rogue, which is, there'd be days that we wouldn't see another boat in the middle section of the Rogue, and they have these awesome, they're not massive summer steelhead, but they're beautiful fish in the 6 to 10 pound range. So and then the wild and scenic, I don't know how many people have been on the wild and scenic, but we did one trip. I did one trip last year with them on that. It's a 4-day trip. You get about 2.5 days of fly fishing, swinging flies, and the other day and a half is running whitewater. But it's something you just have to do. I mean, it's they always talk about when you drop down into Graves Creek, you enter this different world, and it's an amazing experience for those 4 days down that canyon. You got to do it.
That's fantastic.
Danny, hey buddy. Let's
I
go
just
again.
can't get this mic to work, Rob.
Oh no. Yeah, Danny, you had one of the rare doubles when we were bucktailing that day. One of the times you were out, I remember when you were holding somebody else's rod, and ended up both of them go off at the same time. Now what do? You got here's Denny with two two salmon on with, one with each hand. Like that was pretty awesome that day. Well,
Okay, Rob, well, I think you've answered everybody's questions.
good.
Want to go on a trip and needs an extra person? Chuck Morrison says he's all in. I think maybe I've got it. I turned the speaker down a little bit, and that seems to have helped. There's still a touch of an echo, but
Yeah, I'm not picking it up hardly at all now. You sound good.
that speaker controls that. So if I turn that all the way down, we can't hear anything.
Turn it down, turn one of the, turn, so it doesn't pick up.
So are you assuming most of those salmon are Nestucca fish?
No, actually, most of the coho that we're catching are more headed for like Columbia Nehalem fish a lot. We get that from the sampling data that you get back from the fish on occasion. They have those tags in them, and they'll report back. But so that's what they always say that the coho kind of leave the rivers in Oregon and they take a left, and the Chinook leave and take a right. And so we're getting, like, as we get later in the season towards September, we do start to see more Tillamook area and Nestucca coho. But earlier on, like July, August, I'd say majority are Nehalem and the Columbia. Thought we had it, Tim. Dang.
Rob, are you only doing Dory for the summer, or are you doing drift boat too?
No, just Dory trips from May through September. I do have a few people that are doing some tidewater fishing for springers, but for the most part, it's the Dory trips. Yeah.
Yep. Question about building the Dory, or even the drift boat. I know that they come in kits sometimes. Did you guys do all of your timber yourself? Cut all of your timber, or was it?
Yeah.
Kitted?
No, it was all picked up, all the wood from Crosscut in Portland, and yeah, it was all. That boat was built from plans that have been kind of evolved over the last 20 some years from a great Pacific City Dory builder. So kind of just taking measurements and looking at his designs and working from that. So yeah.
So cool. It's such a beautiful boat. She's
Thanks.
so pretty. Yeah.
It was fun. I can say that now. I think Erin probably shake her head. If I start talking about building another boat right now, Erin's gonna run.
She'll leave you if you talk about another boat, I'm sure.
I mean, I'm gonna wait for her to bring it up. She was a champ. I don't know. It was, a lot of work.
Well, you probably need one down south, right? In Southern Oregon. So maybe you should.
Yeah, well, Samsels say they want one. I'm like, we can build you one possibly at some point, but right now I'm still a little too traumatized by it. But
Oh, you guys did it very quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do it quick and do it right. But it was, it's a lot of long days there in that process. I figure I have about 500 hours into that boat right now, and it's still, like I said, I probably have another 40 or so to finish off the things in the inside that I want to get done. So, yeah.
Well, I hope you replace the bucket.
Yeah. So what would
bucket
one cost? Like the one that you made, if you were to buy one, let's say commercially, what would it cost?
For everything, power, electronics, trailer, everything.
Yeah.
They're currently, the wood ones are currently selling with all that for around 85.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. There's Koffler makes some great aluminum ones now, and I think he's selling his for anywhere from 1 to 125.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does he have more than one model now? I know that.
Yeah, he has 4 different sizes, I think.
Oh wow.
So Rob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you perfect.
Yeah. All right, I figured it out. Finally, it's in your program.
Tim, always something.
Yeah, I figured it out. I had to go to another mic that I wasn't thinking was going to work. So
That sounds
obviously it's
great.
the mic that's driving the system. that I thought was causing the problems. But anyway, does anybody else in the room have a question for Rob? I wanted to mention, Rob, that you have compensated the club for your honorarium by giving us a gift certificate that we'll use in the raffle that people can use as a discount. So I wanted everybody to know that and acknowledge you for that support of our club. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you guys and appreciate the time to be able to, come and talk about this. So thanks.
We had a tremendous turnout, Rob. We have about 18, 19 people in the room here, and another 16 people joined us through Zoom. I think this is the biggest meeting we've had since COVID started. So that's a testament to your talk tonight and your presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, it's awesome to see all the people back in the room there and everybody on Zoom as well. But yeah, nice to see the in person there in the room. Yeah. I'd love those 4x16 foot sheets of marine plywood, by the way, Larry. Yeah, that would have been nice. That makes scarfing a lot easier. Yeah.
How much would one of those cost now with the lumber, with the increase?
A 4x16 foot sheet of marine plywood.
Yeah.
It depends on the thickness, but I mean, if you're just going like a 3/8, you're not going to be as shocked as you would by home prices, because fortunately marine plywood hasn't fluctuated quite as much. Demand hasn't been as much, but it would still be it'd be a $400 sheet.
Whoa!
For marine ply. Yeah, they're about 200. They're about 200 for 1/2 inch 4x8s now. So yeah, I mean, it would be a little over that. You have to be. I mean, if it was a solid piece, you couldn't even find that anymore. I mean, you can't do that anymore. You can't find that wood. Right, Larry? It's just doesn't, that's all the old growth, that it just doesn't exist anymore. But
and what kind of wood is the Dory made out of?
The plywood that's used in the Dory is what's called a Hydrotech. So it's a Meranti. It's a proprietary thing. They won't tell you exactly what it is, but it's basically Meranti mahogany base, and then they use other kind of paneling in there. The idea is it's as strong as sapele and a little lighter weight and more rot resistant than sapele is, which is what give you an idea, Shandy, that's what the drift boat's made out of, is that sapele mahogany plywood. Yeah.
So do they do Dories out of teak, or is that just a top? Is that just a
Yeah, teak's just isn't. So most Dories, I'm the only Dory. Well, no, there's one other Dory down there that's made out of mahogany lumber. So everything else on the boat that's not plywood is the sapele mahogany. There's one other person that's down there that's built their boat out of that. All the other ones are just all built out of fir and some oak. So I wanted something that was a little stronger, and that's why I went with the sapele. A little more expensive, but.
Yep, just beautiful.
We have a mic now. If you guys want to ask a question. We've lost all interest. Anybody else from the audience? Anybody else from the Zoom? Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.
Awesome presentation.
Yeah, awesome.
Take care.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet. Thanks.